Now, look, if this Albanese federal Labor government told you the cheque was in the mail, you'd probably be waiting at your postbox pretty nervously. And if you got a cheque from the Albanese Labor government, you'd probably race to the bank pretty quickly and cash it in before it bounced. Because this mob are in deep strife on economic management, as was always going to be the case. And that's a big worry for all of us. Maybe that's why they announced today that cheques will be a thing of the past within 7 years, phased out altogether by 2030.
We know that the usage of cheques has been declining, with a 90% decline in volumes of cheques over the past decade alone. And this is largely because digital transactions are easier, cheaper and more accessible.
Now, some people, especially older Australians, won't like this move, but it is kind of inevitable, and it might have been thrown out today as a timely distraction. Because experts are now speculating that while we'll definitely see another interest rate rise before the inflation dragon is slain, there could be 3 or 4 more, taking rates above 5%. This is going to get ugly for homeowners who borrowed when money was pretty much free. And with the GDP figures out today showing the economy is essentially flatlining, the big question is whether inflation can be brought under control before Australia is driven into recession. This could be redolent of the stagflation we saw in the 1970s. But it also, for me, brings back horrible memories of the late 80s and early 90s when I had my first mortgage. We had those 17% mortgage rates and the recession that Paul Keating said we had to have. Now, the numbers now are wildly different because we started at a different place. Still, let's hope we don't see anything like the human trauma we saw way back then. So I want to call out the revisionism we're hearing from Labor now, pretending that they always said times would be difficult. Here's the Treasurer again from today.
So we knew that this was going to be a difficult year, given the challenges coming at us from abroad and here at home as well.
Really? Was always going to be tough, was it? Didn't sound much like that when Labor was campaigning for the election just 13 months ago.
Vote for cheaper childcare and cheaper energy bills. Vote for secure jobs and higher wages. Vote for hope and optimism, not fear and division. Vote Labor so together we can build a better future for all Australians.
Yeah, it was all welcome to the land of milk and honey back then, and now it's gone a little sour. Economic growth slowing, inflation persisting, wages pushing up, but of course not keeping up, interest rates rising, productivity going nowhere, and that Labor optimism now replaced by empathy and excuses. Now, you can't blame Labor for all of this. The seeds were sown by the previous government, overshooting during the pandemic, of course, and there were global factors. But the Reserve Bank was doing the same, and their stubborn resistance about getting society and our economic settings back to normal as quickly as possible was just problematic. It's not as if people weren't warning about this at the time, about the emergency measures and spending and interest rates being held in place too long. The trouble is, Labor would have made it worse. They called for even more spending at the time, and since winning power, Labor keeps making it worse. They're pumping more money into the economy, forcing power prices up, still doing nothing about getting people back into the office, back into our CBDs, and they're handing even more power to unions as they re-regulate the labour market. So this is Labor's mess to fix, and we have every reason to be extremely worried.